The upcoming stories can all be found in various religious texts, but the atheist content creators telling the stories are drunk. So, whilst the stories are genuine, the details may be embellished. A little. Welcome to Holy Spirits.
So since we're visiting the Native American tribes of the Haudenosaunee today, I don't know if they have anything resembling a communion or a Lord's Prayer or what have you. I know some of their stories, but I don't know that. So instead, I've substituted one from the internet's modern American culture. So I don't actually have a beer per se. This is pear wine, peach wine, peach wine. But we're just going with it. So it goes like this. And you have to get somber and very, very serious. It's very serious business. Our lager, which art in barrels, hallowed be thy drink. I will be drunk, at home as in the tavern. Give us this day our foamy head, and forgive us our spillages, as we forgive those who spill against us. And lead us not into incarceration, but deliver us from hangovers. For thine is the beer, the bitter, and the lager, forever and ever. Barmen.
Huzzah.
Huzzah!
If you were in charge of creating the universe and the earth, how would you do it?
If I were to create the universe, I think it's hard to think outside of this particular box because we've been spending so many years in this universe with all learning about protons and electrons and molecular bonds and all sorts of things. It's hard to think of a different way to do it. I think I might make it out of pixie dust. I might give I'd create a whole bunch of beings out of pixie dust, and they can use some of their pixie dust to create other things. So you have something kind of sort of like angels, kind of sort of like demigods, and they each have the ability to create their own little pocket of this big collaborative creation that we're going to call the universe. And I just kind of like oversee things and make sure that they work together well. Like watch for the emergent properties and the interplays of things so that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. The way things work together makes them even better than they were on their own, because that's the ultimate strength of community. That's why you want a community as opposed to a single creator in charge of everything, because those interplays between the different nodes of reality reinforce each other and create resonances. It just builds everything up and makes it so much more powerful than it otherwise could have been. And it's all thanks to fairy dust. Hi, I'm Ember from Better Than Ember here on YouTube and a bunch of other places. And today I have a homemade peach wine to tell you the Haudenosaunee story of the fall of woman, sort of. So this story comes from the Haudenosaunee people, known as the Iroquois among you North Americans, European descended folks, and so forth. But their actual name is Haudenosaunee. The tribes who currently live in New York State and other parts of the country, the Senecas, the Onondagas, the Cayugas, the Mohawks, and Oneidas. And there's a couple others who were kind of sort of part of the Confederacy, but not part of the original Five Nations. But that's a whole other story we're not getting into today. The point is, they have a really cool creation myth. And I grew up hearing these stories all my childhood. And I thought this was a really cool one that y'all might enjoy. So it starts with the people in the sky, because there's always people in the sky, aren't there? So in the beginning, people lived in the sky, and the animals dwelt below in a boundless ocean. The sky people, they lived forever. They never died, but they were never born. And that's an important distinction to a lot of European myths, because it's just an eternal stasis kind of thing. They just were. They never knew sadness, but they never knew joy. They just were. Their lives were unchanging. But they weren't bored. This wasn't boring, because it simply was the way it was. It is what it is, as they say. It's what always had been. To them, the idea that things could be any other way never occurred, because it had never occurred, and things were always the same. But what the great and eternal sky people did not know was that they possessed the power to change reality if only they thought to do it. So one day, one of the sky people, a woman, had a new idea, and everything went to hell. That is to say, she was wondering what it would be like to have babies, like the animals do. Like, what would happen if you had small people, what it would feel like to be pregnant. And she got excited. She was, what is all this? With the thought, she became pregnant. And I mean, she was thrilled, because she was all about curiosity. What is this like? What is going to happen? There will be more people in the future. This is weird. This is wonderful. But she was the first of her people to do so. So she wanted to share this sense of wonder. So she went to her husband. Of course she did. Her closest person in the whole universe. She goes to her husband and she says, husband, I've become pregnant. I'm going to have a child. Her husband, however, was not thrilled. He didn't understand what a miracle it is to create life. He flew into a rage, the first of their people to do so, shouting about how she had ruined everything, how she had upended the order of the cosmos itself by changing things in such a drastic way. He was so furious. He tore right out of the ground the tree that is the source of light in the sky. He ripped it out, revealing a hole to the world below, and he shoved the sky woman out through it, banishing her from the world of the people, the land of the sky people who never change. Gone. And she fell. And she fell. She fell for a very long time, because the sky is much higher than we on the ground might think. And on the way down, she saw birds. And the birds were curious what the sky woman was doing there, since she clearly did not fly. And to find out the answer, they came together and they took hold of her dress in whatever way they could, their beaks or their talons, what have you, and they brought her safely to the surface of this vast ocean. The other animals were also curious. They met with her to see why she was there. They wanted to know. This is what these sky people, they never come into the world. What is happening? So she told them her story, and the animals were awestruck. She had come from a world beyond their world, where the ways of those who live there are so very different from the lives that they know in this endless ocean, where they are born, they live, and they die. They kill to eat or be killed to become the food. It's a constant change. Very little ever stays the same. Whereas with the sky people, nothing ever changes. So it's a very, very different. And they were very curious about that. And now here she was in their world, where there's life and the possibility of death and things changing. And she'd never experienced this kind of life before. The animals knew it well, but she had no idea. And her very world was different. She was no longer in the sky where things didn't change, but down in the ocean where nothing was ever the same. So she didn't know what to do. It was exciting. It was an adventure, because she was curious and loved to learn, but it was also kind of scary, because there's so many unknowns and no safety, and she'd just been betrayed by the one person she thought she could trust and cast out of her home. She was feeling a lot of things, such as the nature of being a woman, I suppose. So the animals, they decided to help her out. But where could she go? It was this big, vast ocean. So they proposed. They came up with a plan. They proposed to gather mud from the bottom of the sea to create land that she could dwell upon. But there were issues. The ocean is very, very deep, and creature after creature tried and failed to reach mud at the bottom of the ocean until eventually a little toad returned to the surface with a mouth full of rich brown mud. But despite the fact he was a very little toad, he was very good at holding mud, because even though it was just one mouthful, they were able to take this mud and spread it and keep spreading it and keep spreading it. And they never seemed to run out of mud, which is a pretty neat trick when you're trying to build something. So they found Big Turtle, this huge turtle hanging out in the ocean, very stable, solid surface, creature of vast dimensions, not seen in generations beyond counting. So they started spreading the mud on his back to create stable land. And they spread it and they spread it. And the mud grew and grew and grew until it was the size of what we would consider to be a city, and then a state, and then a country. And finally, it reached the size of the land that we call North America, which the Haudenosaunee call Turtle Island. The woman saw how the creatures created things and understood that she could do that too, that she already had, in fact, without realizing it, when she had become pregnant. As she stepped onto the land, she began exercising this newfound power. She sprinkled dust into the air and caused the dust to become the stars. She crafted the sun to replace the tree of light her husband had torn from its roots, and added the moon to be a light that let her see the stars that she had made while the sun was resting. In time, her baby was born, but it wasn't just one baby. It was twins, actually, which even she hadn't imagined. Sometimes the things we put in motion take a course we didn't anticipate. One she named Sapling, and he was a kind and gentle child. The other was Flint, hard and cold, like his name. As they grew, they also explored their power to create and filled the world with the things that they made. Sapling tried to make a world pleasing for his kin and those who might come after. He showed the animals how to live in harmony with humans. He built rivers that flowed both ways, and into these he put fish with no bones. Along these rivers, he crafted plants that were easy to eat, berries that were constantly in fruit. Left to his own devices, there would have been no suffering in the world. But Flint didn't create so much as corrupt. He could not undo what had been made, but he could change the things that Sapling did. So he caused the rivers to flow only one way. He put bones into the fish and added thorns to the bushes and made other berries, some of them be made poisonous. Everything he could touch, he made as horrible as he could. And then he created monsters. He took some of the animals and twisted them to make them into horrors beyond human imagining, to threaten and scare and rampage across the landscape. Driven by this urge to kill and destroy alone, he even diminished the sun by pushing it down as hard as he could for as long as he could, which caused winter to happen, even though the sun eventually came back when he let it go. Sapling, in turn, couldn't undo what Flint had done any more than Flint could undo his works. But he tried to make changes to Flint's changes to lessen the ill effects. He created spring so that life could return after the harshness of winter. He drove the angry monsters underground. Eventually, the brothers, they had to fight. There could be only one. There could be only one. So Sapling had to defeat Flint, but he couldn't kill Flint, for neither one of them had the power to undo the work of any creation, and Flint was the work of their mother. So he settled for driving him deep beneath the earth to dwell with the monsters that he had made. All the bad things shoved underground, like Balrogs in Moria kind of thing. But every so often, Flint gets angry. Well, he's always angry. He's like the Hulk. He's very rrr. But every so often, his anger erupts, literally in some cases, through the earth itself, in fire and black smoke and sulfur and brimstone, in volcanic blasts or great rifts of earthquakes. It's all Flint's rage. And there's more to be said, of course. The Haudenosaunee have a long tradition spanning thousands of years and many, many stories. Lots of legends, lots of really cool legends. But this story, I think it's really cool because it foreshadows something that humans would only really discover in recent centuries, that everything is made from the modification of what already was, that things aren't ever really unmade, only changed, whether that's for good or for ill.